everybody, welcome back to the Woodshop. My name is Rick and welcome back to the Weekend Woodshop. So, as many of you have probably heard in some of the other videos and some of the other shorts that I've done here on YouTube, Dad's table saw broke. And apparently the 30-plus-year-old table saw just couldn't handle cutting hardwoods the way that it could in its youth, although it never was very good at it. Again, it was Dad's saw, it was sentimental to me, but Dad's table saw broke. This is all that's left of it. I am very, very sad. But that doesn't mean that we're down and out. A friend of mine allowed me to use a table saw so that I could keep going with some of the other projects and some of the other business ventures that I had. But in the meantime, I would like to get my friend's table saw back to him. So we're going to do something about the broken table saw. We're gonna build one. Let's get to it.
For our build, we could have used the motor and lift from Dad's old saw, but the motor was a bit undersized and the lift would have perpetuated another problem that I had with that saw. I would have had minimal depth of cut due to the design, so instead we'll be using an old circular saw. Now most DIY table saw videos start off with tearing down the circular saw that is being used for the build. I won't bore you with that. I will tell you that I'm using a Milwaukee 6390 that I was given by a friend of mine, the same friend that is letting me borrow his table saw. What can I say? I have great friends. Thanks, Billy! To get started, I'm building the carriage that the saw will mount in that makes up the lift mechanism. I am building the lift out of 3/4 inch plywood. This carriage went through about 4 different iterations before I came to a design that worked well with the lift system that I wanted to employ. That said, what you see in this video will change a couple of times depending on where you are in the design process. The saw is held in the carriage using the mounting bolts that held the saw's handle assembly to the motor housing. The carriage is held together using 1.5 inch wood screws. Once the carriage was together, it was time to add the components that would make up the lift mechanism itself. I am using 5/8 inch steel round stock and linear bearings. The lift crank handle is made from 3/8 threaded rod, sealed bearings and pillow blocks, and employs bevel gears to change the horizontal motion of the crank to vertical motion to raise and lower the saw on the rods and bearings. Somehow, all of the footage of that portion of the design process got lost or corrupted, so I'm unable to show you how that all went together. I did use Gekman Altuntus's DIY table saw video for inspiration for mine and only departed from the design slightly. I will include a link to his build video in the description below. Keeping the rails in line with the saw, parallel to each other, and square to the outer portion of the lift can be difficult. I took my time with this, as it is a critical part of the overall build, having significant impact on the accuracy of the completed saw. I eventually came to a design that I was happy with, that I thought would function well, and it was time to give it a test. All right, so now that we've got the lift portion of this taken care of, then I think it's time that we start working on the tilt mechanism. The tilt mechanism is going to end up being a trunnion style setup. We'll get into that in just a minute, but I just wanted to kind of show the inner workings of this. So inside here, what we've got is a set of bevel gears. Those bevel gears will allow for mechanical motion to change direction, so to speak. So we're going to have an input shaft here that will be attached to the hand wheel. That will be our lift mechanism. That horizontal motion will go in, it'll hit this bevel gear, which will hit this other bevel gear, which will transition it into a vertical lead screw, so to speak. And then by applying an appropriate amount of mechanical force, the blade will go up or down. It will go the other way. Until we get to the very top, which is right there. Once we're at the very top, this board here is designed to represent the tabletop for the table saw. So once we get to the very top, we're looking at about 3 inches of cut when it comes to the overall blade depth that we're going to have exposed on the surface. So now what we need to do is we need to get into some tilt trunnions, and I decided that the tilt trunnions are going to be made out of 3/4 inch plywood, and we're going to go ahead and lay those out, and hopefully we can come up with something that will allow for this thing to tilt so that we can get any angle. So, shocker, I've never cut out DIY trunnions before. I mean, let's be honest, how many of us actually have? To cut out mine, I used my Harbor Freight trim router and a custom circle jig that I made for it. It took me a few practice attempts to get a size of trunnion that I figured would work well for my build, but once I found one that would work, I went ahead and cut them out using the circle jig and the trim router. After I cut the arcs with the trim router, I trimmed the pieces down to a more manageable size on the table saw, and then finished cutting them out on the bandsaw. I must say, for never having cut out trunnions before, it was surprisingly easier than I thought it would be, and they turned out great. After getting the trunnions cut out, it was time to mount them to the lift carriage. When mounting the trunnions, you want to keep the center of the trunnion in line with the center of the blade. Here I'm marking the edge of the blade. From there I just move over a 1/16 to find center. I'm using some 1¼ inch screws to mount the inner trunnion. The outer trunnion will be mounted to the base cabinet, which we will build in the next video. I hope that you've enjoyed part 1 of my custom DIY table saw build. In part 2, we will build the base cabinet, cut in the miter slots, install the fence, all of those extra peripherals that a good table saw needs. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.